Hey, welcome back. Hopefully everybody had a nice spring break. I know it's kind of like the weirdest spring break that anybody's ever had, but we're dealing with the way that we're kind of dealing with things. So I got a couple assignments this week for you guys. With those assignments, you should be able to follow along. I know that when we first started this, I give you like a page with, do this, do this, do this. That was just an emergency in case we had things, and we had our emergency. So with having our emergency, that we've kind of altered that. Most of you guys have figured stuff out. Um, for those of you who struggled with that like first week and a half of things in the classroom, please understand that what you've done is you've done some work. You finished it. You took pictures of it. You uploaded it to took a picture of it, uploaded it to Jupiter Grades, sent it to me. I've been able to update your grades, and your grades have been updating. Everybody should have an A at this point. I mean, there shouldn't be too much of a reason unless you really didn't do what you're supposed to do on those worksheets. If you were absent, hopefully you did them, took a picture, sent them to me. Everything else right now, we're just going to kind of keep and hold until we get further information from the district. The district and the state and the governors everywhere are still trying to figure out what's going on, but we're doing the best that we can for this. Our main content is going to be, one is going to be this. Please, your textbook is where you want to be. You should have your textbook. Everybody should have checked out a textbook. You should know what your textbook is, number one. Number two is when you checked out your textbook, you should also have this right here. This one right here, it looks just like, yes, it looks just like your textbook. Everything on here, these are the pages I'm referring to when I talk about your workbook. So please refer to that with your workbook. Let's try to take it easy. I'm going to try to give you as much stuff as I can on like virtual tours. The virtual tour of the castle. There's 3 of them. They're really kind of cool, especially when they do the before and after of what it looked like in the 1300s, and then what it looks like now today as far as being ruins. Remember going way back at the beginning of the year, artifacts, ruins, and fossils. And those things were those key words that we used at the very, very beginning. So think about that. There's also a couple of videos. I know you guys really like Terry Schappert. And with Terry Schappert, he has, I'm going to recommend to you, it's online. You can find it on YouTube. But if you go to Terry Schappert, go to Warriors, you can go to Viking Terror. And I'm not going to put out a video worksheet for it because you don't want it, you don't need it, but just watch it, check it out. He does a lot of the Viking weaponry and stuff on the early Middle Ages. And for that, since I wore my Viking shirt today, since we'll be talking about the Vikings, because the Vikings did all kinds of different things and did through that. And we're kind of the terrors of Europe, as you can see where they cross through on all the different places around there, kind of like a Viking tour belt or tour shirt. In addition to that, Terry Schappert also has one that is called Knights. It's called the Knights Night Fight, and that one's really, really good too. And with that night fight, it's a good one to try to watch. I would check those out. We're going to also see David McCullough. David McCullough, he's that one that does historian who does a little bit on a little bit cartoon, telling a story, and a little bit on the documentary. You'll see the one on Castle. I'm going to recommend that you watch that next week. I'm not going to put a video worksheet on that. You guys will be fine on those things. But let's kind of talk about where your chapter was these last couple days. And I will have you're okay. I'll have a couple different lectures and stuff on there. I have assisting me because I'm kind of new to all the technology and everything like that. My daughter's here. She's been absolutely amazing on stuff. Anytime that you guys need something, try to email me and I'll try to answer back. But you got your vocabulary list. I had you just do the vocabulary words on the left, which were the ones on there, the key terms that are in the book. So as we talk about this, let's kind of back up. Remember we talked about Rome. We talked about Rome being a larger empire. With Rome being this great empire, it went across 3 continents. Went across Europe, Asia, and North Africa. And Rome was probably one of the largest empires the world has seen, based off of, not off of land, but based off of population. It took over some of the great populations and united some of the great populations, Europe, Africa, and Asia. But Rome fell somewhere in about the late 400s, going into the 500s. Barbarian invasion. As you can see with all these barbarian groups, you can kind of see these different groups that are out here. Anything from the Visigoths to the Ostrogoths, the Burgundians. The Franks is going to be our big one that we're going to be keying on, which of course we have the kingdom of the Franks, which will be the French, right? That's where we get the word from it. This group up here called the Angles, this will be the land of the Angles, which we'll call Anglin. We have the Celts, we have the Druids, the Saxons, the Jutes, the Frisians, Danes, right? Denmark. And later on here, the Norse, which are our Vikings, which we have is basically Norway. These are our Norsemen or Vikings. Swedes, Sweden. We get different names on here from Slovakia, which was a country back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Slovakia is kind of broken up. To even like here, the Vandals, which is when the Vandals raided in, we talked about raiding into Rome, that this is where we get the term vandalism for destruction of public property. So the Vandals, we have all these different names, all these different groups, and these different people are going to do that here. I live in Chino Hills area, and so the Basque in this region are still very large, and we do have a big Basque community in Chino, in restaurants and stuff in Chino. So these are the groups that broke down. These are the groups that broke down and broke apart Rome. And Rome fell, and when Rome was the central power, it split into all these different groups. A little joke for you here. The Visigoths rule. Huns was here. So here are basically our Vandals. So those barbarian tribes broke down and broke down and broke down. But what happens is we're going to find some of the larger tribes that are in control. And a couple of those larger tribes that are in control are one, the Franks. The Franks are going to rule mainland Europe. And they are going to be a true powerhouse. They are trying to unify and trying to build the best that they can. Another group is going to be a group way up in the north. We can call them Norsemen, okay? The men from the north. They are the Vikings. And the Vikings, these guys were great warriors. They were great conquerors. The problem is with the Vikings is they spread way too far in too many different distances. But somewhere toward about 1,000, they actually made it across through Iceland into Greenland, and from Greenland, we know they made it into Canada and the United States, up into New York area. And the other group is going to be a Germanic group, or the Huns. They're going to be the eastern part of Europe. And those Huns are Ger, G-E-R. Ger is basically a Latin word for spear, the spearmen. German, be the men of the spearmen. And so the way we kind of see Europe breaking up is we see it broken up. We have some small little clans, but a lot of it we have these larger groups on there. Our main focus is going to be here, the Franks. Okay, the Franks are going to be our biggest thing right here. Now, why Europe? Europe is amazing, absolutely unbelievable economy, unbelievable climate. It is what we call Mediterranean. Kind of like how we have Southern California, where Southern California has perfect weather through the summer, through the winter. It is not really extremely hot and dry, a little bit, but it's not extremely cold and wet, but we get a little bit of it. They have this Mediterranean weather that brings in some of the most amazing agriculture. And this agriculture has been great through Greece, it's been great through Rome, it's been great through the Middle Ages, or the medieval period, or we can also call it the dark period. We call it dark period because there was not a lot of growth of technology and trade that went on. This Mediterranean environment has allowed Europe to be the essential part for everybody wanting to be there. And Europe, everybody wants a piece of it. We'll still see some of these building of some of these clans who then built kingdoms. We'll still see some of these kingdoms and stuff still today. And a lot of them will be building on the castles. We still see a little bit of the trade routes and stuff that will be there from the Roman Empire, which we know Rome traded all the way through Persia, through India, and then all the way to the Far East, being in China with the Silk Road. However, the Silk Road will be cut off during this time period. Our big leader is going to be a guy by the name of Clovis. This is where the Franks come into power. The Franks are going to unify the best they can into power. This young 15-year-old man who basically just was like a natural-born leader. As a natural-born leader, the people follow him, and what he does is he expands the empire over the next 30-plus years. He is able to unify the groups based off of Christianity. And he unifies and spreads Christianity and starts to kind of get a centralized Europe once again. However, he loses power under his sons and his grandsons when they take over, and the Franks kind of fall for a little bit. His kingdom, you can see here, we'll see the Frankish kingdom start to expand and start to unify. However, as they drop, it will come up once again. Another Frankish leader years later by the name of Charles Martel. Now, Charles Martel is one of my favorite leaders because Charles Martel has one of the coolest nicknames. His nickname is Charles the Hammer Martel. We all want a nickname like that, as opposed to like, Mr. Cole right across the way, Aaron the Sissy Cole. We don't want to have a nickname like that, but Charles the Hammer Martel. He gets his name because he starts unifying the Franks once again. Builds Christianity. So we have a unifier of Christianity. Where we talked about the Muslims were able to unify, the Christians are able to unify here. And as as he's able to unify the Christian kingdoms, he now is able to unify them because of a big fight that'll be right over here in the Pyrenees Mountains. At this Battle of Tours. Now, here we go. Let's back up a little bit. The Muslims who are over here in the Arabian Peninsula, they expanded in this area and they're now knocking on the door of the Byzantine Empire, which was the Eastern Roman Empire. Now, after a split between the Umayyads and the Abbasids, the Umayyads moved all the way across here through North Africa and made their way into here, into basically Spain and Portugal. They want to keep expanding. However, what happens is the Frankish kingdoms under Charles the Hammer Martel are going to cut them off in the year 732 at the Battle of Tours. That's where he gets his nickname, for hammering back the Muslims and saving Europe. Because of that, the Christians are going to stand behind him and stand further and further and further behind him and grow his power. So even when Charles Martel passes away, he leaves the empire to his son Pippin. Now, what does Pippin do? Pippin expands the empire even further than what his father Charles Martel did. And for the first time ever, he gets the blessing of the church. By getting the blessing of the church, now the Pope and anybody else who has Christian armies are going to now start to follow Pippin into that. Pippin's empire is going to expand further than his father did and further than Clovis going back a few years from there. However, it comes to a head with probably the greatest medieval European leader of all times. He'll be the only French leader by the name of the Great. His name is Charlemagne. Okay, if we look at that, Charles, we can see the name out there, Magnificent, Magnificent. Charles the Magnificent or Charles the Great. This guy is unbelievable. He's the son of Pippin. He's the great-grandson. He's the great-grandson of Charles the Hammer Martel. And this guy comes into power, and this guy is a natural-born leader. He's a big man as it is, and this guy looks at how to create a kingdom and how to create absolute power. During his lifetime, he goes on over 60 major campaigns and continuing to expand the rule of the Franks and the rule of Christianity over a 48-year period that he leads, expanding and uniting Germany, France, Italy, coming in and uniting the area way above, almost to the English Channel, and also pushing back the Hun Empire. He becomes so powerful that he will actually be, by Pope Leo II, he'll be crowned the Holy Roman Emperor. And crown the Holy Roman Emperor because he'll unify Christianity and unify Europe. We will still celebrate this day that he unifies because it will then go and mark the date of December 25th, the first day of the year of the rule of Charlemagne as the Holy Roman Emperor. And from that point on, December 25th, we'll celebrate that day. I know some of you guys are going, December 25th, that's Christmas. Christmas was one of those with the birth of Christ. We did have an idea, but it was never solidified as far as being a date. However, December 25th from here on out in the year 800 will be that day as being that tribute to the Carolingian king. Now, yes, once again, Carolingian. In the United States, we have two states named after the Carolingian king. South Carolina and North Carolina are both named after Charlemagne. Charlemagne was amazing. His accomplishments in learning and his accomplishments in basically religion. When it comes to learning, he is going to expand writing. He's going to expand education. He's going to expand scholars. Of course, the scholars are all writing and copying from one book. They're going to be writing these books, and as they write these books we call illuminated manuscripts. They are writing basically chapters from the Bible, and they're expanding them out. Now, just like copying notes in class, I love to doodle. Love to doodle. I doodle, I write, I add things, I do all kinds of different things. Many of these monks did, and they created some of those beautiful illuminated manuscripts. They colored them, they painted them, they did all these wonderful designs along with these notes, and they wrote some things in there, and they wrote the Bible out. However, one of the most important scholars is a man by the name of Alcuin. Everywhere that Charlemagne went, Alcuin went with him. And Alcuin recorded everything down that Charlemagne did. Because Charlemagne never had the time to sit down and learn how to read and write. Charlemagne remained illiterate. That idea of like this guy flipping the pancake here, okay, breakfast was served. Breakfast served any time. We look at the idea Charlemagne was not able at all to learn how to read and write. However, he expanded education further than any of these leaders during the time of the Dark Ages. When it comes to religion, he's going to unify everybody under the Christian church, under the Catholic Church. He is going to put standards in the Catholic Church the Catholic Church still uses today. The Catholic Church will use Latin phrases for a very long time, and in some Catholic churches, they still use those phrases. In addition, he is going to standardize everything so when he walks into a church, this is the way things are all done in every single church, so it doesn't look like he does not know what he's doing. The Catholic Church is still, much of it is still standardized today because of Charlemagne. And Charlemagne, those standards are still there because of him. He also allows freedom for Jews to actually come. He realizes this group is very well read. He realizes this group, a lot of it is the Old Testament, and a lot of the commonalities that are there are huge besides. Charlemagne's power is going to be in the way that he rules. People followed him, people loved him, people did everything for that. However, when Charlemagne dies, the problem is his grandsons lose power. His son, Charles the Pious, meaning Charles he's kind of there. He's just kind of himself. Charles is going to start to lose some of his borders. Eventually what happens is his sons take over. Lothar, Charles, and Louis. And what they do is they split the empire. When they split the empire, that means that they were so angry with each other, they did not work with each other, they lost their alliances. And as they split the empire, they became weak, and basically they became attacked from other groups. With that attack from other groups, Vikings, Saxons, and Normans are going to be our next rulers of Europe. And that's where we'll kind of talk about tomorrow. I'll have something set up for you today. Thank you guys. Have a good day.